All right, as we're continuing on with the Odyssey and our epic poem with our main character Odysseus, uh, let's see, it would have been on Tuesday. We looked at some things dealing with the Trojan War and some background into that. Um, and we're going to keep looking at some things with background into the Trojan War in ancient Greece and that time period so that we have a better understanding of um, why things happen to Odysseus along his Odyssey, his journey home after fighting in the Trojan War. If you remember, that Trojan War started when Helen um, is kidnapped from King Menelaus, and this whole war breaks out, and um, for like a 10-year war, and Odysseus is one of the main soldiers fighting against Troy back from kind of the Sparta area in ancient Greece, and he's the one that comes up with this clever idea to build this huge wooden horse that they give to the Trojans as sort of a peace offering, and everything kind of breaks loose from there as they break into the city of Troy through this wooden horse. So you needed to, with your homework, which was the ancient Greece, the Trojan War worksheet. Go ahead and turn that in if you haven't already. Many of you did turn that in. I know you did because that was kind of your exit ticket from class the other day. So go ahead and get that turned in. Um, and then I am going to go over the answers to that. All right, again, the passage background that you had to read with that was that the Trojan War was fought thousands of years ago over a beautiful woman named Helen. The Greeks defeated the Trojans using a trick horse that looked like a gift but had soldiers hidden inside. And again, the idea of that was Odysseus's idea. So, first of all, that passage that you did read about, I talked a little about an epic poem as well and what that is. So, the first question here, who was Homer? Well, Homer was a famous poet. He wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, as well as some other works as well. We're going to be focused on the Odyssey. The Iliad and the Odyssey were two big epic poems. And again, when think of a poem, sometimes we think of something that's like roses are red, violets are blue, um, your feet are smelly, I love you too, or something like that. These are big poems. They're like huge stories. We're talking hundreds of pages long when they finally get written out. That's what an epic poem is. It's a big story, basically. And Homer was the person that people think wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. Two, how would the author probably describe the Trojan horse? C, as a trick to win the war. The war had been going on for 10 years. The Greeks couldn't break into the city of Troy. And finally, they were like, we either got to give up or think of something new. And that's where Odysseus thinks, oh, well, maybe we can act like we're at peace with them. We're giving up. We'll give them this huge wooden horse as a gift, as a peace offering. They'll let it into the city, and then at night, when they're celebrating the victory of this war, and then maybe sleeping, we'll have all the Greek troops inside of it break out and then destroy the city, which they do. Number three, what was Helen and Paris's main problem? Well, Helen was already married. She was married to King Menelaus, and he was one of the Greek kings. And so she left, or they say she was kidnapped by Paris, who was a prince of Troy. That's their issue. She was already married. Four, based on the passage, what does furious mean? Angry. Number five, the passage of the Trojan War is mainly about D, an ancient war and how it was won. What poet was written about the Trojan War? The suggested answer would be Homer. He not only wrote the Iliad, but he also wrote the Odyssey. The Iliad is like the first 10 years about the Trojan War. We're not going to read that. Although, hey, yeah, Christmas break coming up. Maybe you should read it then. Um, but then also wrote the Odyssey. 7. How did the soldiers fighting in the war probably feel about Paris and Helen? They're probably many of the Trojans may have felt loyal to their prince and they approved Helen. Others may have been upset because this one female, her kidnapping or her leaving to go with the prince, this one action many felt was very selfish, which caused a massive war where there were thousands and thousands of deaths. The Greeks would probably feel anger toward Paris and give him blame for running away with him. Number 8, the question below is an incomplete answer. Choose the best answer for it. The Trojans fell for a trick and, as a result, D, they lost the war. Number 9, read the following sentence. While the Trojans slept, Greek soldiers snuck out of the wooden horse and let the Greek army into the city. Who is the subject of the sentence? Greek soldiers. What did Greek soldiers do? They snuck out of the wooden horse. Why? To let the Greek army into the city. And when? While the Trojans slept. And then there were some vocab words at the end they had to do. Those weren't quite so important. So basically just a little bit of check for your reading to make sure that we have a good base understanding of what the Trojan War was all about. All right. Moving onwards and upwards as we always are. So today we are going to look at a little bit more what it means to be a hero and what an epic journey is. Those two things, an epic journey and epic heroes, because that's what Odysseus is and that's what he goes through. And these we can parallel a lot of this stuff to today's world. Who are some epic heroes possibly in present day? What people you know that have gone through maybe an epic journey in their lives, where we can start to compare and contrast them to Odysseus thousands of years ago going through this. So follow along here as we talk a little bit about this and give us some more background for the text we're going to start reading here pretty quickly. So the first few things that we want to look at, let me move my picture maybe out of the way here. There we go. What is an epic? Okay, again, it's a long story in classical times, a poem. We call it a poem, even though it's not your typical 4-line poem that we think of, telling of a hero and his or her adventure. They used to be sung or like performed. They weren't necessarily written down. And some of the people that did those things, like that was their job. They'd go from town to town, city to city, and perform these poems. And maybe at night, in the evenings, in like downtown in certain cities, that was the entertainment. And people would go watch them perform these poems. Reveals the fears and desires of a culture. So by reading this poem, the Odyssey, we are going to more understand what Greek culture back in ancient times and still somewhat today maybe was all about. Some of the social norms, the things that they did in their society. We're going to be able to study a little bit as we read through the Odyssey. It often follows a pattern and contains an epic hero. Think of some modern day epic or epics. All these stories. Anastasia, Spider-Man. Let's see here. Avatar's on there. The Avengers, Hunger Game, Mulan. Oh man, Harry Potter, Narnia. Oh, Harry Potter. There we go. I've never watched all, like, my wife is a massive Harry Potter fan, and so are my boys. And so the last couple nights we've been starting to watch the whole Harry Potter series. For them, it's like the fifth time. For me, it's brand new. Mulan. Oh, the new Mulan. We watch that like every day in our house. But these are stories, if you've seen these, of an epic hero. And as we start to define what an epic hero is, I mean, you can start to think about it's a character that has this long, huge journey and has all these ups and downs, and throughout these challenges that are thrown at them to become the person that they are at the very end. And if you think about all these characters from these stories or other stories that you can think of, there are epic heroes all over the place in terms of literature, movies that we watch. So, some personality traits of an epic hero. The epic hero possesses the qualities most admired by a culture, whatever culture that may be. For example, courage, determination, wit, wisdom. When we work on some hero stuff later today, we're going to look at what qualities do we as a culture desire or think are good or admired, and then we'll maybe be able to pick out some epic heroes in our world today. It's a larger than life character, someone that is just famous or they do extraordinary things that normal people don't necessarily do. Usually, but not always, someone better than the average person or marked as being important. So, for an example, like a prince. In modern epics, the hero is often an average guy or girl who rises to the occasion. We think of Spider-Man, right? He's just the average, everyday kind of high school student. He gets bit by a spider and then turns into Spider-Man when problems arise or when he's got to go fight the Green Goblin or whatever. He rises to the occasion. We're going to skip over that. Something happens, a traumatic event usually happens to the hero on his or her journey, or the traumatic events happen. If we want to think of Simba being an epic hero, his journey is that, hey, he's got like a 10-year journey from the time that Mufasa, his father, is killed. That's an epic part of his journey. That's the first part. That's a traumatic event for him. It's life changing. And that kind of sets him on his journey, right? Um, he then leaves home by the guilt of Scar. Scar kind of guilts him into leaving home because he makes him feel like his dad's death was his fault. They go through battles and hardships. The hero fights monsters, faces demons, struggles against temptations. Um, Again, Simba does that on his journey into the woods with, what is it, Pumbaa and oh boy, I can't remember the other little guy's name, the funny guy. But he faces his own demons, right? He's challenged to think about his past. Those are kind of the demons on the inside of him, to overcome that and go back home and fight for what is his. And then he struggles against some temptations. At the end, his big piece of his epic journey and fighting monsters would be fighting Scar at the very end. Oftentimes, there's some supernatural aid or a mentor along the way that help them. So the gods, a fairy godmother, fate, etc., helps the hero out as he or she goes on his or her journey. Um, in The Lion King, that's Rafiki, right? Rafiki is kind of that supernatural character. We're going to see with Odysseus, he runs into lots of supernatural characters in terms of gods and goddesses and other characters throughout the story, that some of them are there to help him out. Actually, for him, others are there to like hurt him and slow down his Odyssey home. Descent into darkness. So it could be emotional, spiritual, or the hero literally goes down into the underworld. But at some point, the hero must face a terrible darkness, whether literally or within him or herself. So it's either some inner demons that they have to face, or they actually have to face physically, like an opponent, an enemy, um, that is or go through some tough places, some places of darkness. And usually this occurs kind of right before the dawn. They finally break through. And then there's a homecoming. The hero gets a reward. In epic poetry, this is usually a homecoming, although any sense of a spiritual reward or positive ending counts. In other words, one of the most important elements in this, the hero wins at the end. Sorry to ruin the end of the Odyssey. And in the case of The Lion King, the end game, the hero wins when he gets back home finally defeats Scar, and then has a baby lion cub of his own. He has overcome all of his obstacles and his Odyssey, his long journey from the time that he left Pride Rock and in his land from when his father died until he comes back home and takes what is his as the new king. So, epic examples. We're going to do a little work here. You don't have to follow these directions because I got a worksheet for you that was just posted um, to start working on. All right, let's take a peek at that. So your job is going to be to work on this worksheet. Who is a hero? The directions below is a space for you to make a list of 8 people or heroes that have certain personal traits or characteristics, an area for you to define the word hero, and a space for you to list 3 people that you would consider a hero. Would this person be considered an epic hero based on what you've learned defines an epic hero? So, based on some of the stuff we just talked about. We said oftentimes heroes are defined as people that fill certain traits or characteristic traits of what that society or culture respects, admires, thinks are good, whether that be good or bad necessarily. Um, and so the first thing you do here, task 1, just like the directions say, next to each trait, name a person you regard as a hero who has this trait: integrity, courage, intelligence, concern for others, financial success. They're self made. They've had some significant achievement, or they have charisma. If you don't know what those words mean, look them up, figure it out, dig a little bit. And these could be famous people, they might be people just in your life. It doesn't matter. Someone that kind of fulfills that trait. Task 3. Now I want you to define a hero in your own words. You define what a hero is for you. And then lastly, task 3, list 3 people that you would consider a hero and in complete sentences explain why they are a hero. And I'm going to change that. Complete. Whoops. Complete sentences. Minimum of 3. Explain why they're a hero. And that could be under your definition or the definition of hero that we just talked about. That we didn't really talk about definition, but what we just looked at in that PowerPoint of what a hero might be considered. So you're going to need to list 3 people and then expand on it. Again, these could be famous people. These could be people that are relatives of yours that we may not know who they are. It could be someone, in fact, it could be a character from a movie or from a book that you've read. That's fine. Okay, when you are done with this worksheet, we're going as we've gone in the past. Turn it into Google Classroom. Then in our chat on our Zoom, go ahead and let either Mrs. Beckham or myself know that you are done. We will then check the worksheet. If it's done and complete, we will then give you further directions whether you need to stay in the Zoom or that you can head out from the Zoom class today. Okay, so you're not allowed to leave until you get directions from us that you're able to go. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you can go on your way and start to be a hero to someone or some people this weekend as we're moving forward. All right.